Vamos agora ver a conferência de imprensa virtual convocada pelo ministro da Educação provincial, Stephen Lecce, nesta terça-feira. O encontro foi especialmente dirigido aos média comunitários e o Correio da Manhã, Canadá também marcou presença.
Very much appreciate everyone taking some time. Want to just go over a few items of interest, one of which deals with protecting children and the safety of our youngsters, holding our education staff accountable when and if there are violations, sexual, inappropriate acts against children. I think that's an issue that we take very seriously in our party as a progressive conservative government. We have a zero tolerance approach. For Rudy, for Doug Ford, for myself, we're making sure that the penalties are stronger and that we actually ensure that there's not an individual working in the province of Ontario that has had any history of criminality or inappropriate actions towards children. So I'm going to outline that and also a bit about our testing program and how the early results are of that as we continue to keep schools open and do our very best to keep them safe. Just with respect to the issue on what we have done to get tougher on individuals, educators who have histories of sexual abuse, possession of child pornography, anything inappropriate for an educator. And I should say off the top, the vast majority of our teachers are good people, work hard, are friends and family. But for the few that are involved in this type of despicable behavior, I required the Ontario College of Teachers in the fall to go back through every Ontario educator's background to see if there are any examples of individuals who have been involved in inappropriate activities and abuses towards children. And they were able to unearth well over 20 educators that were working or could have worked or were working within our school boards today that had that criminal background. And I have expunged them. I've literally removed their ability to teach in the province of Ontario forever. No longer can they teach in this province in any region under any guise, removing that potential risk to young people. And for the government, we are very much a law and order party, and we believe that those individuals should never teach again, and they will not as of this year, as of today. So that's a very important thing. In addition, I've directed the college for anyone who has a mandatory revocation of their teaching certificate, so anyone who's had their teaching certificate revoked, that they have no possibility of reinstatement. The college would have the ability to fine members up to $5,000, the Ontario College of Teachers, requiring them to pay the costs to their respective college, as well as provide victim supports to the child. And I just wanted to really echo that because I think there's a concern happening with respect to risks to children in schools. And while I very much am grateful for the hard work of educators in Ontario, let's be clear, many of my cousins and aunts teach within our publicly funded schools. The fact of the matter is there were some people that were left, that were allowed to stay in our schools, a gap that the former Liberal government never filled, and that has now been ended and fixed, and I think to the benefit of families and the safety of our children. I also just wanted to talk about our asymptomatic testing program. We conducted asymptomatic testing in Toronto, Peel, York, Hamilton, Ottawa, Sudbury, and a variety of regions of the province. And I'm very pleased to report, due to the hard work of parents keeping their kids from congregating, reducing any interaction, making sure they're still following the rules, and because of the strong safety measures, infection prevention measures in place within our schools, that the rate of COVID cases amongst asymptomatic students in some of the hotspots of the province was at 0.86%, which represents, according to medical experts, a very low level of transmission. In fact, the schools in the hotspots are disproportionately safer than the communities that they reside in, which I think again demonstrates that the program we put in place, fully supported by the Chief Medical Officer of Health, fully endorsed by him and leading medical experts, is that it's working. Now, what I will also emphasize is the importance of keeping our vigilance up, because of these variants of concern. We need to remain on guard and continue to urge people to follow public health advice and to get tested. The voluntary testing program, our asymptomatic testing program, is a choice up to parents, but we have decided to use less invasive or non-invasive methods, saliva-based testing for children, or the lower nasal swab. That's the one that literally just it tickles your child and their lower nasal area does not go sort of all the way up and back as some of us may be used to from our own experiences. So it's not invasive comparatively. It doesn't hurt. And more importantly, it's in your communities, in your schools, right across the province of Ontario. And it takes only a few minutes with nurses administering those tests. We also provide rapid antigen tests on the spot in many of these cases. So you can go get a result literally within 2 hours. So rapid, proactive, it's in your riding, it's in your community. And I think it's making our schools safer by being able to identify cases. So we're proud to be the only province that has this type of program. Like so much of what we're doing in Ontario, we lead the nation, but this is an important addition, a layer of protection. And we're going to continue to step it up to make sure that our schools remain safe. I also will note that, look, increasingly it's clear that, the opposition parties, the Liberals and the Democrats, the teacher unions have one position, which is we need to just keep schools closed. That's the sort of default of many of them because of concern of safety. This is the same folks that wanted us to close schools in September and October and November and December. And thank goodness we didn't. We listened to doctors, the actual experts, when dealing with a human health pandemic. And we'll continue to follow the expert advice of the chief medical officer. We'll continue to be on the side of parents that want schools to be open and fight for common sense, fight for strict measures, and for the investments that your child, I believe, deserves to keep them in school. That's just for us job number one for Doug Ford and for our entire team.
Nuno Ades from Correio da Manhã, Canada.
Hello, Minister. I'm Nuno Ades, a journalist at Correio da Manhã, Canada. My question is more directed to the Portuguese community. In 2020, last year, we had a Portuguese couple arrested for sexual abuse practices in their private daycare center. My goal is to know if there will be more supervision in private daycare centers in homes that are very common in the Portuguese community. Thanks.
I appreciate that question. And obviously, Portuguese Canadians, like Italian Canadians, like my own experience, I think like a lot of immigrant families, either those that have been here for 20, 50, 80 years, but I think the commonality amongst most of us is that we turn to our families often or to cultural daycare programming that uses the language. And I appreciate that. It resonates with me. The changes we made to the teacher side apply to the childcare side. And I should have mentioned that right off the top. All the changes to the Ontario College of Teachers apply to the College of Early Childhood Educators, which is the childcare system. So both expectations for schools and in childcare with one mission, which is to ensure that those that care for our children are people of impeccable character, of decency, and who have a record of following the rules, both from infection prevention for COVID all the way to something as dramatic as the criminal code when it comes to child protection. So it is a priority in our childcare and our school settings, and I appreciate that question.
Thank you. Next will be my good friend Rami from Oxygen Talk Show.
Thank you very much, MP Rudy, and thank you very much, Minister, for this action, for this bad issue that happened. And actually, my question is, what actions did the ministry did for the kids in order to educate them what to do in such a bad situation, and what are there any programs to encourage them to speak about these bad issues to a certain teachers or specialized teachers?
Yeah, there are places for children to turn, obviously, if they have these types of concerns. Actually, to Rapinder's question, to our principals and VPs are trained for any form of violence, abuse, trafficking, human trafficking, given the government's legislation announced yesterday to deal with sexual trafficking, human trafficking, often of children as young as 12 and 13 years old. and by the way, overwhelmingly an Ontario problem. It's a Canadian challenge, but 2/3 of trafficked individuals are trafficked in Ontario, in this country, overwhelmingly off the 400 series highways. I live in Vaughan. The 400 is right in the middle, it goes right there. Really, in our own backyards, up the 400, the 401, the 427, there are children being trafficked as we speak. So we're taking a strong position to make children know they can turn to someone, both in the schools and in their communities. Kids Help Phone. We've increased the supports where people can turn to discreetly, confidentially, to open up about any problems. And obviously, when it comes to supporting the kids, because this could be very challenging for them if they have to admit it. It's not easy on anyone. It's probably very tough on children to acknowledge that they've maybe faced this type of inappropriate text messages or touching, etc. There's also significantly more mental health supports for these kids so that they know they could get access to a psychologist or a psychotherapist or just someone to talk to, a professional. We've hired 200 more mental health workers for our schools and another 200 last year, psychologists and psychotherapists and social workers. So we're going to really try to provide a full support for them. First step one is they know where to turn to if they have faced that type of difficulty. Step two is that they get the mental health supports to help them get through it. Just make sure that they know that we're going to be there for them.
Next question will be going to Kathy from the Greek Press.
Good afternoon, Minister.
Hi,
Thank you for the invitation once more. So my question is, was there any check in the past before they got hired, the teachers? I mean, during the previous time, or it was just a criminal record and that's it, they got hired? I mean, it sounds a little bit difficult for me to understand, it's very plain and very easy, that step, but if they missed it, the previous governments, then it's a big false.
Yeah. I think what happened, Kathy, is some of these may not have been criminal records, but there could have been inappropriate text messaging that didn't reach the standard of for example, criminal code offense. And so the former government didn't really take an approach that it could have included things like inappropriate actions that maybe don't reach the standard of criminal offense. By any measurement, any rational parent would say, no, I don't want a teacher who's been sexting a student working in a school. They may not have broken the criminal code, but they've broken, I think, a moral code to the safety of children and to have good judgment and to exercise discretion when they're talking to kids and they're in a position of power. So we've applied a tougher approach to this, and we have gone back to look through the gaps. Anyone has these records, anyone has these violations, to remove them, and we have. And I think that's an important step forward when it comes to the safety of kids. I do agree with you. It's wrong that that some of these individuals were still teaching in our schools, but we take a zero tolerance. We did our due diligence. And I assure you, there's not one left in this province, because we have looked through each and every record of every single educator in Ontario. We're talking about like hundreds of thousands of people. It's not a small exercise, but we did it quickly because we know what's at stake, which is the confidence of our parents and the protection of our kids. And we don't apologize, really, to be quite frank, when it comes to expecting the very best of our children. And obviously there's 28 odd people now that their names are public, and some of them were terminated from their school boards, like as this report became public, because of this accountability that we put out. So it's an important step forward. Hopefully this closes the gap entirely, and we're just able to move forward having full confidence that the people that teach our kids and care for our kids are decent people that care about